Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of our podcast, Rivers Files. Today, we'll be covering three new topics. The first one being a reflection on earlier module or activity we've done in the classroom. I chose to do the discussion we did with the interviews as far as asking the people around you for what they thought science was, and I realized there was a lot of misconceptions. So I wanted to do my reflection on that one. The next one would be a famous cold case. I chose the Claremont killer, and the last thing we will do, we will go over a article on a new forensic technique that's being developed or used. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. So the reflection I'm doing is from Learning Module 1, specifically the interviews I did. What is science to people? I realized when I did it, the people around me, they just didn't get the questions right, or just they didn't know what it was. Like some of them didn't know what a fact was, some didn't know what a theory was. There was a lot of misconceptions. So I was like, why exactly what is this? I thought the people that I interviewed work as a respiratory therapist. They work at the hospital. So I was like, these people aren't like are educated. So I was like, why are there so many misconceptions? So I decided to look a little further into the reasoning, or maybe find an article, maybe to help me get my thoughts together as to why this is. Um, So I looked up an article and I gained a little bit of insight on the matter. For one reason, this would be happening. One reason would be that there's so many misconceptions because science is taken for granted. Meaning, the reason why we do it is taken for granted, and even on all levels, especially in when they're teaching it. So we're learning how to do science, but we're not learning why we do science. So I believe that this is where a huge misconception comes in when it comes to people getting it wrong, right? And the next thing that I found, um, the main reason is that a lot of false information is being put out, even in science books. So this would be another reason why science gets a lot of misconceptions. People don't know. They just a lot of not. I don't want to say lies, but like notions are put out into the world. A lot of kind of like a pseudoscience. People think it's real, but it's not really real. Like what we went over. A lot of things are said and they're repeated and they're constantly, and then eventually adults think that it's true, just like anything else. If someone told you the sky was green and kept telling you the sky was green for years, eventually you're going to believe the sky is green, right? Um, but I just think the bad information being put out, especially nowadays, even when people are wrong, they still put the information out. And I was reading in the article. Another reason is why they can't simply. There's no science can't answer all the questions, and since there's always a little pushback, since science can't answer all the questions. um, Alrighty, so that's why I think There are so many misconceptions, false information, people putting bad information out, and then like pseudosciences that are not real, but like, people think they're real. So I just think better education will remedy that. Uh, the link for the article that I looked up is in the description as well. Um, Without further ado, let's get into this the famous case that I chose. I think it's a pretty interesting case. So the famous case that we will be talking about is the Claremont serial killer. This case took 25 years to solve. Um, that is a long time. But technology just wasn't advanced when the case happened. So like a lot of the cases nowadays, if you ever watch Cold Files, they pick up a case that was considered cold, which means like there was no leads or anything, but there was like some information. But now that technology has been getting better, they're using technology to solve these cases years later, which is the case for this one, 25 years. So the Claremont killings happened in Australia. It was three separate incidents of deaths of young women in Australia. The killings began in 1996, where the first victim, 18-year-old Sarah Spears, went missing after going to the club. She went out with a good time with her friends, and the last time she was seen, she was calling for a taxi. Half a year later, our second victim, 23-year-old Jen Rimmer, went missing in a similar fashion, going out for drinks. Her body was found 40 kilometers south of the Claremont. And then finally, our third victim, 27-year-old lawyer Ciara Glennon, went missing in the same way as the other victims. They went out for drinks again, and then she went missing. Her body was found 50 kilometers to the north. So the other one, the second victim, the first victim, Miss Spears, her body was never found, at least what the article said. So her body was never found. Our third victim, 27-year-old Ciara Glennon, her body was north 50 kilometers of Claremont, and the second victim, Jane Rimmer, was 40 kilometers south, so 50 kilometers north and 40 kilometers south. So that was, she went missing. So our final victim went missing in 1997. Jesus, I was like 6 years old when that happened. I'm a little older than most of the people in my class, but I digress. The case, it wasn't until December 2016 until the police arrested our killer, Bradley Edwards. So how was this solved? I'm sure you're wondering, like I was. So apparently, Edwards had a separate assault incident, or there was another incident that happened in 1988, right? So Edwards, they didn't know it was him at the time, but Edwards attempted to assault a woman while she was asleep in her home. When Edwards was there, he had left a white dress or kimono. It's called a kimono, but dress for people who don't know what a kimono is. He had taken off a clothing line, and he left it at the scene of the crime with semen on it. So that's still not how it got solved, but it's very important, a very important piece of information. Edwards also left a fingerprint at the scene of the crime at that time. So the fingerprint and then the DNA from his semen was left on the dress. So how did this happen? Okay, so the semen, they looked at the first case and found all the evidence, right? And then Edwards came up on a assault charge. He assaulted a coworker, and the fingerprint found on the doorknob of the assault for the 1988 assault case matched the fingerprint on the door on the doorknob, matched the fingerprint when he got fingerprinted when he got arrested, right? So boom, that puts him there. So that he was there at that crime. But the DNA under our second victim, Sierra Glennon, they found DNA in her fingernails. So this all tied back to Mr. Edwards. And he ended up being charged and for 40 years in prison, or I believe he still is. So he was found guilty for the first, so for the second two. The first victim, he got acquitted of it, but it said that the judge believes that he did it, which it all kind of ties together. They all went missing at the same in a similar fashion within a year of each other, and it just so happened that they didn't find the first victim's body. So that's how he was caught. It's kind of crazy how it took. So they used the DNA. So like the DNA was able to be used, and it tied back to him. So this guy's been doing stuff since 1988, and God knows what else he did. But he was finally caught for this. All right, and finally, our final thing. We're looking at a article. This article is also in the description, so all the links to all the references that I've been using, they're all in the link of the description. We're going over a new technique that they're using. So the technique is and it's an extraction technique that forensic scientists are used on woolly mammoths and Neanderthals to extract DNA evidence, but they're using it now on burn bodies. So before, the only way to identify a burn body, was by the teeth, dental records, which I find super interesting what they're doing. So while they're trying to figure out the bones, so they usually try to figure out which bones are the best used. So they're using techniques as well to decipher which bone to use. They can see the color of the bones, and then they use, depending on the temperature, they use that bone to extract. There's better bones, right? So if the bones is too burnt through, there's going to be less DNA they can extract. So the larger bones, usually like the femur, is used to extract the DNA from there. So now they're being used in cold cases. So like before, where people were just burned alive and burned in a case like that, it'd be just like dental records to identify, and there was nothing else to go by. But now they're using that as well on. They're using the extracting technique. They're extracting DNA from the burn bodies in cold cases now, which I found super interesting. I learned that it's going to be extremely difficult to be a criminal in the coming years with all the technological advances that's coming out. So I found that super interesting as well. But that is all for our episode. We went over a little bit, but I just found the cold case, and I found the article super interesting, and I hope you did as well. I hope I did a pretty good job explaining it as well. As always, remember to like and subscribe. If you lasted this long into the video, thank you so much, and take care.